Hello, I'm Anand Ranganathan and this is my colleague Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Welcome to Swarajya Conversations. We're delighted to have as our guest today the Defense Minister of India, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman. Ms. Sitharaman, welcome to Swarajya Conversations.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Wonderful. And she needs no introduction, but still, for the benefit of our viewers, she is the second woman Defense Minister of India. The first one was
Indira Gandhi.
right, and thankfully, I think she doesn't share a lot of attributes that the first Defense Minister,
Absolutely.
the first woman Defense Minister did. But if she does, we'll ask her if she does or not. Just a brief introduction about Ms. Sitharaman. She did her BA from Trichunapalli, and then, yes, she did an MA from Jawaharlal Nehru University. And during the time when she was at JNU, going around on dharnas, lockouts, and the usual JNU sort, which she would probably deny, she also met her husband there, and they got married. So that's so I suppose JNU holds a very special place for Ms. Sitharaman. Coming back to the list of questions that we have, so we request that Ms. Sitharaman would answer quite crisply because we have a lot of questions to go through and we have a limited amount of time. And let me begin by, I'll probably ease into the questions because I'm not the person to be asking hardcore defense questions. In fact, I probably know as much about defense as the Minister of State for HRD knows about evolution. So there, Abhijit would help me. So let me start off by saying, asking, first of all, welcome to Swarajya Conversations, Ms. Sitharaman. This FIR against Major Aditya. Now, there was a controversy that raged on for about a couple of weeks. So did you recommend that the J&K police file a non-generic case against Major Aditya?
It doesn't even come to me, or till today, it hasn't even come to me for any recommendation. So neither orally nor written have I given any specific or generic permission for filing an FIR against Major Aditya.
Right. So what the Chief Minister said on the floor of the J&K Assembly was not true?
Well, as much as I've seen what the Chief Minister has said, there were full stops and commas.
Okay.
And it didn't seem that she has attributed the FIR to me.
Right. But nonetheless, a minister from not a minister, a member of BJP, your party, Dr. Swamy, asked for your resignation. Your comments on that? No comments?
No comments.
All right, okay. Is that a normal thing for him to do, ask for resignations?
I don't know.
Right. Okay. Okay, so that clarifies at least that matter.
That aspect, yeah.
Nonetheless, I mean, this is perhaps the first time that you've actually clarified on this matter. At least for the first couple of weeks when the controversy was raging, we did not hear from you a clarification on that matter. Was that something that was by accident or you just didn't wish to clarify on this?
Was it something on which I have to give a clarification?
Well, your colleague asked for your resignation. The Chief Minister of J&K actually was trying to quote you and insinuate that it was something coming from the MOD. So wouldn't you said that something requires a clarification from your part?
If it had reached a stage where I had to give a clarification, I would have. I don't hesitate to give. After all, I've been a spokesperson of the party explaining party's position. Why won't I want to give a?
Okay.
But
Right.
there are times when it's probably better not to respond when you think.
Okay. All right.
When you think it doesn't need a reply.
Okay, fair enough. Let me come to the second question, which is again a non-defense question, just to clear everything off so that you come in. Were you forced to come out and clarify on the Nirav Modi issue, because that was highly unusual for a defense minister to actually come, and in light of events that actually followed that night when the PNP scam, so-called scam, actually came out, and I just found it, and a lot of people also found it highly unusual that you, rather than Mr. Arun Jaitley or some Minister of State of the Finance Ministry or someone in that sector, actually should have come and clarified on the matter, but it was you who did so.
See, we may be ministers, but we're also party workers. And several times, depending on very many factors like who's available, who can come and speak on this matter, and so on, the party sometimes requests if we can come and do a press.
Okay.
We do that. Not so much as a minister, and in my case, each time I address the press from the party office, I start by saying I'm here as a Karyakarta of the BJP. And as a Karyakarta of the BJP, I can speak for the party. And that's not because I'm a minister also. I'm a Karyakarta. I can definitely anytime use my party's platform to speak to the press.
But let's also, I mean, it's quite rare for you to do it ever since you became the defense minister. I mean, we used to see you a lot on television debates and on, points of view at pressers and things of that sort. But after you became the defense minister, I mean, that kind of frequency is come down.
So. Also because if it's a weekend or if there are a couple of days in my hand,
okay,
I go out of Delhi. So if I'm in Delhi, and if there is an issue on which the party would want me to do a press conference, we do go. But if I'm not in Delhi, obviously somebody else would do it. But in the first few months of my being in defense, you're right, I've been less in Delhi, I've been traveling a lot, and therefore it didn't just work out. That there was an occasion when the party needed me, and if I were to be here, I would have done it, but I wasn't here.
Right, okay. And specifically on the Nirav Modi issue. And
well, it's not so much the topic, I think it's also a question. The other day, I went again to address the press from the party's office after the Congress plenary.
Yes, yeah.
So the topic is
doesn't really
secondary, but your availability, you're in a position to rush to the party office and do all this.
Okay. Because after your comments on the Nirav Modi issue, and increasingly as the scam unrolled, it became very clear that it wasn't just the Congress or the UPA era that had to blame for this. I mean, BJP would also, or the NDA era would also take a sufficient blame for having continued with the LOUs and things of that sort. In that context, Abhishek Manu Singhvi threatened to sue you because of your comments on that some jewelry was bought by his wife using cash. That was a particularly strange comment to make in that context, won't you feel?
Well, many of the matters which I had raised, it's also state here, they're also already being raised through the media. If at that time I had raised issues, I also had some papers in my hand which I clearly showed displayed during the press conference to say, look, there is this issue. I'm not getting into the details all over again now, but if I had some documentary evidence, and as a party worker and as a party, it is only appropriate for us to raise it. Answers can be given. Now, if I didn't even have a paper based on which I'm raising the questions, you can say I'm insinuating. But no, I had a clear set of papers which proved 1, 2, 3 different occasions where they were probably commercial transactions and relationship contracts or whatever. I'm not now doing anything to add to that press. That press stands as it is. I'm just sort of paraphrasing from a memory. So it is the party's prerogative to raise it, being an issue of importance. And even to say that this scandal which originated during the UPA continued further into the NDA is only to prove how the point which we need to prove here is, if it happened, it is us who also have initiated action. And none of those contracts or the LOUs were being renewed. The episode as it has come out clearly shows that the person who was also I don't know if I want to use this word, but for want of a co-conspirator, let me say, for want of a better word, was playing around with the LOUs which had no securities paid to the bank.
Right.
And an LOU which would expire at the 90th day, and you would bring in a newer LOU. Here was a case of that person who, anticipating his retirement, had extended it blanket for 365 days. And therefore, when the newer person took over, and when this issue was highlighted, not just from here but also from some other different places, this government did not hesitate to take action. So the relevance of the period is got to be highlighted with the fact that the action was indeed taken by us, but not earlier.
Right. I mean, if I may, that's partly or substantially true, but it is also true that a complaint against a subsidiary company, which was of Choksi, not of Nirav Modi, was actually forwarded to PMO India.
Yes, I've answered this before.
Right.
That was related to a Ponzi scheme which this group was running, and immediately the PMO has referred it to, at that time, had referred it to the registrar of companies, and they have already started working at that time. So that so-called whistleblower of 2016 was not talking about this particular LOU misuse, but was talking about a different thing, about a different group, which incidentally are related.
Right, okay. And finally on this matter, has Dr. Singhvi issued a defamation notice against you or nothing?
No.
So you haven't received anything?
You haven't received anything by post. Okay. All right. Now the other question is coming back to defense, and where I would request you to kind of slip in here. What's all this about the army saying that there is an alarming shortage of funds for modernization?
I suppose you're raising it from the report which has come out of the standing committee.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the standing committee's report, I will take it in all its seriousness. And even as we talk now, the parliament is in session, it is still in session. And my reply or my explanations for a standing committee's report should actually be given in the House if at all I choose to speak on it. Otherwise, it can be a privilege issue. There were many other things also said in the standing committee report, and I'm sure sometime you would also go through the report in its full and realize for many of these sentences which are coming out, the responsible uniformed officers have also said a lot more about how power has been given or delegated to the vice chiefs. Commensurate financial powers have also been given for them to do any emergency purchases. That is when you're talking about, are we prepared for, let's say, 10 days intensive war, as they call it as 10I, or are you prepared for a true front or 2.5 front? Different terminologies are floating around. I'm not subscribing to one, I'm not subscribing to the other, but I'm just floating all these which are coming in the conversation. So these vice chiefs have also been saying how powers have been delegated to them, and most of those critical equipments have already started being delivered. Even those are in the standing committee's report. I guess it's going to take a while for all of us to read it in full and then pick up on those points.
Right. So, understanding, ma'am, that it is a question of privilege, let's just talk about it in slightly theoretical terms then. Generally, what happens is if there's a stagnant budget, the military pretty much has to downsize. And we've actually seen the Brits, the French, and all downsize quite rapidly, but become a much more effective force capable of much more rapid deployment and achieving a lot more. So, on a theoretical level, are you seriously looking at downsizing and instead of going from a traditional force posture to a more technology intensive, smaller footprint, more deadly force posture?
See, there are two things here. Both are not thanks to me. It had already been put in place. Looking at the force to be more lean and mean, keeping in mind the teeth to tail ratio, keeping the optimum age in mind for the commandants, all this has been discussed elaborately, and also this peel factor, as they call it, has also been brought in, so that people with a certain age and certain experience, but reaching a certain level, post which the pyramid remains very tight and the promotional avenues become delayed. So all these have already found a play in the scheme of things for all the three forces, plus the Coast Guard.
Right.
So if you're looking at a lean and mean fighting machine, from the conventional point of view, we are already reducing the age of those who are in those critical ops positions, so that they are in their best years, fit years, mentally and physically, and not there because of the number of years in service, but also because of the prime age at which they've reached it.
Right.
So it is now done both with a combination of peel and have them somewhere else, but push those who are reaching the point of optimal age. So that's when you're looking at a conventional warfare and manpower. Simultaneously, we are looking at getting many of these, going back to the standing committee, obsolete, archaic ammunitions and equipments, gradually removing them out and bringing in technologically superior, more potent and lethal weapons. And that again is for the front line first and for the second and the third layer subsequently.
Right.
Not that I can flood everybody with the lethal weapons at one go. It has to be proportional.
Created.
So yes, technology will be increasingly used. And if you have to today look at it, I'm sorry, I'm not being concise or crisp.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So when you're looking at technology, the quick and immediate beneficiary would be the Air Force, as you can see, the big platform, big vectors, all of them. But that's not to say that Army and Navy are going to suffer. Navy again, big platforms and everything. Army, you're looking at so many number of soldiers, all of them equipped equally powerfully and so on. So technology and also the age factor, all of which are working together to get the whole thing a lot more lean, mean, and lethal.
Fair point. So
Before you ask the next question, so can I just come in here with a layman's question to probably both of you, which is that traditionally, if you've seen, in the left thinking sphere, or the you can say the non-hawk, the what do you call the opposite of hawk for the defense? Peaceniks, the doves. They traditionally ask for a cut in the defense spending year on year. And if you look at, for example, UK from the 50s, and there was a nice chart, I think, in The Economist, where they drew a comparison between the spend on the health and education of UK from 1955 onwards to defense. And it's actually, it's really one has gone up, the other has gone down. Now, do you find as representative of so-called hawkish government, when you cut the defense spending, which the non-BJP people want anyways, do you think it's like a lose-lose situation? Because anything that you do, which is traditionally should be done, we see all around the world this is being done in developed countries. This is like a problem for you to cut defense spending where it should be done?
I don't think I look at it in that kind of a black and white way. Spending in defense, I think, is a lot more sophisticated now. As I said, we may be cutting down on a bulk of many of these resources which have been there for years, bringing in more lethal weapons, which mean they will cost more. And as a buyer nation, you're also paying more. As with technology, you'll have to end up paying more for many of the things. So that said, which means your budget should be more, will be an argument which comes next.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say that we have to fit today's reality. Not that I'm going back to harping on the government which was before us here, but it is a reality that for almost 10 years, your capital expenditure, for want of decision making, remained where they remained. And I think also now there's a lot of recalling that narrative which was there during NDA 1 about keeping the capital fund, the outlay, in a rolling manner so that nothing lapses, so that if there is a delay in your decision, you still have the comfort that the allotted money is with you and a year hence I'll still be able to spend it. That's been a talk, nothing has happened even since then. That meant the money cannot be rolling on, it'll lapse each time. The fault may be yours if you didn't take a call, if you delayed a decision. That money which was allotted with that kept in mind will not wait for you. It's
Right.
gone.
Yeah.
You ask again. So now my list of purchases or necessity having been established, as they say, AON, the necessity has been accepted and established. That list is a long list of 10 plus our 4 years. And I'm trying to clear, not just me, my 2 earlier predecessors also had started clearing those which have been waiting for all those years. But the fund didn't wait. The list is getting elongated for delay in decision.
Let me be clear.
The idea of fund having to wait and roll on without getting lapsed would have answered all the question of I have adequate funds. Here we go with the list which is grown with every year, and I'm able to match it up. It cannot happen because that idea did not fructify. We didn't work on that idea of I love that budget to be there, let it keep rolling, I can use it. As a result, today your list of wants, even if you reprioritize, is longer than the money which gets allocated for you for this year.
Right.
The past 8 years, 9 years, 5 years, 4 years, everything which was allotted, keeping in mind your demand that you gave, has all gone back for want of timely decision making.
Right.
So today, if you're saying you don't have enough money to buy all that you wanted, yes, the list is growing, but the idea that in defense sometimes delays due to procedure, delays due to certain reservations, can delay decision. Will also have to be
Okay. So coming to the operational creep then, because you fix the money supply side, let's look at the spending side and Air Force precisely because it's such a technology intensive and therefore capital intensive thing. If you remember in 2007, the multi-role combat aircraft was changed to the medium multi-role combat aircraft, and that kind of derailed the entire light fighter replacement, the MiG-21 replacement as it was meant to be. And this new proposal that's floating out there is again meant to replace the light fighter, but then we hear in the press again that it's again been opened up to twin jet procurement, which means your MiG-21, the light end replacement, again gets diluted into a heavy to medium end replacement. So how is this process being what somebody might call derailed in that sense towards the light side? How does this reconcile? Because this seems like the same mistake that was made in 2007 as well.
See, I think most often when decisions of the ministry, particularly in such instances, are being critically appraised, I'm not sure if I'm right in saying this, but I can't see any other explanation. When decisions are being critically appraised, it's presumed that the Ministry of Defense takes a call devoid of inputs from the Air Force. The ministry's decisions includes Air Force, if anything, is predominated by the service and its viewpoint.
Right.
So when you have the long-term perspective planning, and from there comes the sector-wise or service-wise capital acquisition proposal, the SCAP as they would call it. All of them have the input of the respective services. And in this case, if Air Force then wanted a certain combination, and with which negotiations went further, And then the Air Force had a second. Let's just put two milestones, then and now. There were intermittent changes, and there were other mileposts in the course, but I'm taking today's position, is not drawing room decision of the Ministry of Defence. It is clearly a decision where the Air Force themselves are looking at changing theatre requirements, changing training requirements, increased momentum given for Make in India and your LCAs. LCA where you're already reaching a stage where you have the Mark II, which is progressing fairly speedily. So the decision is more taken on the basis of Air Force's priority of what they want in terms of how many twin engine, what kind of a combination of training aircraft, fighter aircraft, single engine, and what your requirements are. So that basket that gets determined of a certain or a couple of certain types of aircrafts is essentially a decision which the Air Force decides for its, let's say, today's and the next 5 years, next 10 years requirement. So requirement of the Air Force changes, the ministry discusses it with them and then takes a position saying, should we do it this way now? Yes, changes have happened. And in the meanwhile, we should also understand, at that time, if they had a single engine India make, and also therefore went ahead with a certain decision of buying from outside only a certain number and not more, had also to be reviewed in the light of India's own LCA. However very good it may be, does not produce as much as you would want. And in saying this, I want to just say we've already placed 48 or something once and 84 again. So, end of the day, about a 123 is already given to UHAL. But this is my pet peeve, that they don't produce more than 8 a year. So does the Air Force therefore have the right to say, we still support you, we still want you to scale up, we still want your Mark II in the place of Mark I, but in the meanwhile, can we get something outside? It is never therefore at the cost of our Tejas, we are going outside, we still want Tejas. But at the same time, because we are taking Tejas, Air Force cannot say, we have to confine ourselves only to this, nothing else can be. So it's constant balancing and rebalancing.
But that then, just to be absolutely clear, I'm a Tejas skeptic, so I'm going to come from a skeptic point of view. But there are two issues then. The first is when the Tejas 1 itself has been development in for almost 34, 35 years now. What has changed at HAL or ADA that gives you the confidence that where they pretty much failed at the Mark 1, they can suddenly go up to the Mark 2? Because with everything we've seen when they shifted from the GE404 to the 414 engine, the gross weight also increased, so any of the performance benefits that were meant to happen did not happen. Has there been new management there? Has there been new designers, do you feel, new scientists, new anything which we're not seeing on the outside that gives you confidence they can deliver on that? So that's.
But the orders placed are for Mark 1. When I mention Mark II, I'm saying in the future when Mark II will come in, we still keep a certain window open for it. But yet the Air Force is not, as you rightly say, if this is not going to happen now, as it has not happened in the last decade or so, they're not saying our preparedness is going to be affected because we're waiting for this. But because we do not want to underestimate, give them an opportunity that they have to do it at least sometime, we keep that window open. You may give it to me because you're Indian manufactured, we will. Indian designed, Indian developed, Indian manufactured, we will still wait for you. But my preparedness will not be affected because I'll still get something from outside. So there are two. Here is a consideration that you're supporting and fully willing for them to take their full-blown good variety that they can give us. But yet, you're not making that as a hindrance for efforts.
But then getting back to the imports then, one of the things I saw which was a bit worrying was that in the DPP itself, the news report said that this expanding the number of vendors, for example, would help you play off one against the other on the price issue. And this was something that happened in the Rafale as well, that I've actually got the clipping of the DPP here if you'd like to look at it, the 2017 DPP, where there's absolutely no prospects within the DPP for playing off L1 against L2 or L3. Once L1 is chosen, the only thing that can be done is price point negotiations, at which point L1 has to actually hand over technology to L2 to give you a different price point for the same product. And that's based on the belief that all these technological secrets will be handed over to an arch competitor. I was wondering, that seems to be a particularly unrealistic part of the DPP that doesn't account for IPR issues and things like that. So how are you actually going to manage to play off one against the other if there's a very clear decision in favor of L1?
First of all, are you asking me this question in the context of Rafale or in general?
In future tense, for what's happening now with the new
we are conscious of that. And till now, it's a question of arriving at the L1, making a clear statement from the Air Force about the technology that they need and the kind of aircraft that they would want, for instance, if it is aircraft. And it is only after that that you are looking at L1.
Right.
So it is not just the price determinant which is going to finally decide on which one you're picking up. You're looking at all the tech specifications also, which may vary from one vendor to the other.
Okay.
So really, it's not as if we are going to have a situation where, as much as I can see things today, that we'll end up with an L1 and then the tech specifications and ask the L2 to have the technology or vice versa. I don't see it. But if there is a, let's say, anomaly in the DPP, we'll certainly be looking.
Okay. Sorry, you can...
No, let me just club a couple of questions, from the thing. One was, I heard you say that Tejas, only 8 Tejases can be delivered per year. So that means if you want 80, how much does a squadron have?
18 to 21.
18 to 21. I mean, for 80, you need 10 years. Doesn't, Minister, that seem a hell of a lot of time for you to...
Yes, we are very conscious of that. And that is why I repeat, whilst accommodating our own HAL stages, we are not allowing the Air Force to live with that gap. When they need, let's say, 18, not that a full squadron is only with the Tejas, but in any case, if it is only Tejas, and with the time that one has to wait to get a complete squadron delivered by them, we are ensuring that at least the Air Force is conscious that that's not just going to be the only way in which you can build up your strength. Simultaneously, the HAL is being reminded that they should immediately, as quickly as possible, look at assembling through various others too, so that 8 can become a larger number if only they can share it with a lot of Indian OEMs. Right. Many of them, in fact, most of the parts are developed India, supplied by our own small and medium industries, which will help in the larger economy and the job creation too. So we are suggesting to them that they need not be so monopoly in producing, can they not spread their...
So what I meant was, sorry, just to come in, when you say reminded, suggesting, you seem terribly polite. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that here is if you don't crack the whip, your Make in India requisition, 8 in 1 year, that means 80 in 10 years, you will always be importing more than Make in India would be able to refurbish the thing. So that gap, you need to do more than remind them politely.
I wouldn't probably talk about it in media.
But then, ma'am, it brings me to a very interesting thing I read in the Telegraph yesterday, because you said that they need to outsource a lot of the work to the OEMs in this country, which brings us to the concept of mentorship and exposing our domestic industry to the external market, work share, so to say. a lot of foreign companies seem to have that expertise in exposing, because most of the cutting edge of technology these days, as we realize, is done by the small and medium sector, because they're much more flexible in that sense. Yet I saw this news item yesterday in the Telegraph which said that you weren't particularly keen about 100% FDI in defense because that technology would never be shared. Now, the way I understood it was that usually the technology, the IPR, is not given, but the educational aspect of it is they recruit a lot of Indian engineers to work on it. You see what's happening, and then you have a domain knowledge, a corpus of Indians created who can set up a new company, do the 5 to 10% variation required for IPR to be overcome. And yet that doesn't seem to have been factored into Make in India or this 100% FDI thing. Could you get a bit more into the education angle possibly?
I'm not sure what is the write-up that you read in the paper that you mentioned, Telegraph. I can't recall any of my statements in the recent past which would have excluded any kind of FDI.
Okay.
I only probably narrated what the categories of FDI available for.
Right.
49%
Yes.
route is automatic route, and above 49 it's going to be approval route. And we are looking at companies which want to have transfer of technology. We are open to 100% FDI too, but of course it will go through the government approval.
Right.
And probably these are the only ways in which I would have explained government's policy in defense FDI. So nothing to exclude.
Right.
So we've been the victim of fake news again. Editorial discretion, we put it down to that.
Okay, yeah, just one question I wanted to ask specifically your the way the ministry is handling expertise. Now, what I want to ask you, Minister, is what has changed since the time of the last government? I mean, do you believe that the feedback loops or the scientists or the retired experts, to me it seems that they're probably the same. So the advice that you're getting over and above the decisions that you take, of your own accord, has that advice changed, or is it just that you are different from the previous government? So that over final decisions would be, not based so much on.
So basically, if all the sources of input are the same, how is the output going to be?
Yeah.
First, of course, I think, irrespective of the inputs, the output is you are with a conviction that you have to perform. You are with a conviction that this ministry has to be up on its toes. You are with a clear agenda to deliver. And not just your manifesto, but not just the spirit with which this government functions, but you also realize, because the time at which we had come in, we realized that for want of timely decision making, a whole lot of things were just lying unattended to. So it was, whether it was Manohar Parrikar and subsequently JP and myself, all of us are keeping the ministry as much as we can on the toes to get things going, to bring it to the notice of the minister, where it has to come to the minister and where it has to go further up till the CCS, take the issue, have decisions made, either way, but we should have mind applied on most of it. So even if for a minute I want to believe that all sources of inputs are the same, how is output going to be different? Output is different, and you can see it with me or with my two predecessors.
So it
And
does.
as a
I'm
result
sorry.
of which, whether you're looking at procurement, whether you're looking at relationship with the three forces, whether you're looking at issues related to human resources in the three forces, all of them are getting attended to. You can always fault one decision for certain things which are missing, or fault another for something else, but decisions are being made.
Right.
Backlog are being cleared. Newer issues are taken up front and discussed, mulled over, and then moved for the competent authority, whoever be it, up to the CCS to take it up. So for a minute, even if all the inputs are the same, the approach is different, the work style is different, the ethics of this government is different, and most of it is done in a very transparent, open way.
Right.
As regards inputs, I do take the inputs of officers who have retired, They come and meet me openly. They are recorded, in the sense not taped, but
Glad you clarified.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
the time when they come in or the appointment that they saw, the fact that they meet me, broadly the kind of issues that they talk with me are all known.
Right.
So I do take inputs from many of those who have experienced, and also not just the retired officers, ex-servicemen, but also from people who are out there observing what's happening in defense experts, people from various think tanks to approach.
Great.
So we take inputs.
So just to juxtapose that, ma'am, with what you said earlier about trimming the army, the pyramid, the military pyramid, so to say, the command structure pyramid. How much do you reach out to young and upcoming officers, say at below brigadier level? Because that would be the next wave of thinking. Because retired people always tend to think, as far as I'm aware, from still almost World War II style, they haven't really changed. So what's the input loop from the younger operational levels, right?
Not as much as I would want.
Okay.
I must confess. Although I try breaking the, let's say, protocol, hierarchy, and do talk to people. I think by the time they get to wearing their stars and uniforms and everything, the mindset is like, I can't be talking out of turn.
Absolutely.
So it takes a lot to break that and take inputs. But I think today the social media has become so powerful, for good, bad, everything. A lot of communication happens through the social media, where I think many of these officers do pass messages on, give their input, and I do benefit a lot.
Can I ask one question? I recently had the good fortune of interviewing Nitin Gokhale, who's a defense expert, and he's written a book on the Modi doctrine. And there he mentioned that 1 week after the Uri attack, this government, and that at that point of time the defense minister was Mr. Parikar, he ordered equipment, placed order for equipment worth 24,000 crores. Now again, if I can tie it with, the thing about the input might not have changed, but the decision making has changed. How would you say that as an outsider, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that the decision making is still reactive, not proactive. That we wait for an attack, and then we order the stuff that we require rather than being proactive and
Not really, but sometimes I can see where you're coming from. There can always be a coincidental cause and effect
overlap
kind of
of
a thing. But no, as I said, our interest is to clear everything. To that extent, yes, it's reactive. But we are also talking about a lot of new things, and that's where your Air Force narrative has come out saying, have you changed the milepost today?
Yeah.
We are certainly creating a lot more discussion and making the forces come back to us about rethink from the point of view of how potentially technology driven are you?
Right.
And if you're not, where would you want to, remove the flag and then go forward in looking for something which is going to be superior. So this change is happening at a time, unfortunately, when the last decade has passed without adequate supplies.
Right.
Now, the general perception would be, wouldn't you want to first of all fill that gap rather than tempt them to a discussion about reprioritize on the technology that you have. There are times when you go back to talking to them and say, shall we fill that up, because now 10 years have passed, you need something to fill it up, you've stated your SQRs for that, would you want to move forward? The forces themselves feel that time is gone, we'll have to now look at different technology.
Right.
So, reactive sometimes, but now that we are on the top of the backlog, we are proactive too in changing the paradigms which govern your decision making.
Right.
So to that extent, yes, we are moving.
So then again, to juxtapose something, because you brought up the tail to head ratio. As the more technology savvy we get, the more we realize that the ISR element, which is the non-combat element, and the human element, actually in Western forces, technology-intensive forces, accounts for almost 90% of the budget, and the actual equipment, the fighter or the tank or whatever only accounts for 10% of the budget. Yet we find all the focus in India still very much on big ticket, say a Rafale or a T-90 or a Kolkata class destroyer, rather than an entire tail of ISR assets that needs to be built up. Do you find in your oversight of this department that you find that that's also changing, that there's a lot more talk about ISR being a much greater enabler than the actual combat aircraft, ship or tank itself?
Actually, I would put it this way. When I compare our HADR activities and the nature of things with which they undertake HADR, and being the first respondents in the Indian Ocean region, and also, let's say, to a large extent in the Himalayan region, the equipments that we use are far superior to many other countries. And here I don't exclude developed nations too. When I say superior, it is not to say about which generation of technology that I'm talking about. It's more to say on every aspect of relief and rehabilitation, as first respondents, the kind of things that we need, I think we are, well, using a word or terminology can be sometimes used against you back again. But we are world class.
Okay.
I would want to say that when I have had this discussion, whether it is in the ADR plus or when you have bilateral, most often people are asking us to have their manpower trained on HADR. And training is not just on how you reach, but also with what kind of things do you do.
Of course.
So there's always scope for improvement. But on HADR and the kind of instruments and vectors that we use, we are much better than many of the countries. But of course, even that requires a lot of attention. We've never starved funds for that, because even as we plan, even as we place demand with the finance minister, the requirement for ops, the requirement for HADR, the requirement for any other things are all already classified. It's not as if we forget all this and just focus on ops.
Yeah.
So there is a blend of all this.
Right. The last question now, which is unfortunately a nuclear question, which was the statement you made a few days back at a book launch, ma'am, which was that our response to a nuclear strike would be proportionate. Now the thing is, our doctrinal position is massive retaliation, which from a legal and strategic strike standpoint of view is the exact opposite of proportionate. So how would you reconcile your statement of proportionate and massive retaliation?
That is where I think, and I'm not with hindsight amending anything that I've said. There were two things that I was simultaneously talking about. And I realized I didn't keep a bookend and then move to the next.
Okay, fair point.
I was clearly talking about conventional warfare, because if I remember, the way in which I placed the details was that about the Indian Army size and how in many of the things, particularly I think I was talking, if I recall, I was talking about infiltration, containing infiltration, how we are able to stop infiltration at the border, push them back rather than allowing them to come in, and in those kind of violation of ceasefire, we are responding with commensurate and proportionate response.
Force. So,
but even as that was being discussed and post that, it was also talking about a nuclear doctrine. I continued in the same way, but I did not use this response adjective, and verb there. For so much the nuclear side of things, it was the conventional warfare, the violation of ceasefire, response when there is a violation, and in that we hit them back proportionally.
So just to be clear, that was again fake news, and we stick to our doctrinal position.
Also my way of presenting myself and talking. I go on, assuming,
Fair point.
somewhere people do see the thin line between this and that.
So the doctrine remains the same, no change, we stick to our doctrinal position.
Can I end with a diabolical question?
Of course, please go ahead.
Which is, and the reason why I say this is diabolical is because God, and thank God, we haven't had a large-scale, proper, I feel horrible saying this, war for 47 years. Now, which is good for the countrymen, but as far as, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, for the defense personnel, to be in the thick of things. I mean, if you look at
planners.
For the defense planners,
Yeah.
I mean, you look at America. America has had a war every decade since the World War II.
Same with the
more or less.
Russians, the French, the British, they
Right.
all test.
So, what is, would you like to comment on our lack of being in a conventional proper war for 47
A lack of
years?
combat experience to formulate
War plans.
war plans.
Can you articulate that better?
Okay,
I'm
so
not
just
sure.
because we don't keep engaging with adversaries on a large scale basis like a lot of the other nuclear powers do, big powers do, how confident are you of the robustness of the war plans? Given Clausewitz says that the first thing that shatters when you contact with the enemy is your war plans.
Well, I am of the view that the three forces are absolutely, constantly doing their training in such a way that they're prepared for any eventuality. As much as you would hesitate in asking a question which involves what if,
Yeah.
I would use the same hesitation for reasons which are, I suppose,
Operational.
common sense driven. We want peace, we want our countries and people to live in safety and be able to perform their day-to-day activities without any worry or concern. But the Army, Navy and Air Force are constantly gearing up only to be sure that they'll stand up to any challenge. That, in spite of the fact that there's, as you said, luckily been no war, but that doesn't mean they are one bit laid back, one bit less prepared. Only when you go to their, operational areas and see them in action. Not that I'm an expert, but from the way in which other countries also look at you and talk about the perception they have of you, you realize that your men are absolutely fit and fine for any eventuality. So, an absence of war in the last 47 years does not make them less prepared.
Okay. Thanks very much. And maybe if
Thank
I
you,
can
ma'am.
be really devious and slip in one final question. Do you see yourself as a defense minister for the next 6 years?
Well, there's an election coming in 2019 and post that it is rocket Prime Minister.
Okay. And the Prime Minister would be Mr. Modi?
Absolutely.
Absolutely emphatic there.
BJP-led government and Prime Minister.
All right. Ms. Sitharaman, pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.